Thank you. So good morning from my behalf too. Hopefully you have slept well, and have you finally realized that you have came to Finland? It was not a dream. And to notice, we have only a few snow during the summer here, as you have noticed. Only a couple of mosquitoes, and only one cross-country skiing competition during this summer. So, apologizing about those. My name is Jyri Komulainen, and I'm University Chaplain there in Oulu, in the middle of Finland. And I was asked to lead this keynote discussion today. We have titled this whole day as Mind. We have three subtitles under the boundary: Mind, Nature, and Fragility. And this is the day of Mind, and the first keynote discussion is how we endure change. And we have some very good specialists with us here to open this theme. On boundary, it seems we are in change all the time. We are all the time in a change. That's the reason we have this theme of change today. How do we endure change? As we are University Chaplains Conference, we mostly naturally approach our main topics from the needs of international context, especially from the European context of chaplaincy ministry. And in order to navigate in there on some boundary or boundaries, we need to know where we are now. What are the coordinates of the place we exist now? That's why we are going to tackle today something about these questions. What are the changes that are now at hand and going on? What are our current living and operating environments? How to build a sustainable and good future, especially from the point of view of young adults in Europe. What the future of Christianity and other religions look like now and in future, globally and here in Europe. How could we as chaplains and other staff workers in the universities promote our mission in this kind of atmosphere and world? The schedule for this keynote session is here shortly. So we have two very good introductions for the theme, and then we have short comments between Jyri and Sanna. I present you lately a little bit closely. Then we have a common discussion. You have opportunity to ask and comment. So hopefully we're going to have a good session for this day. And so we have four such specialists, Sanna Rekola and Chief Specialist Jyri Komulainen today to lead us. Yes, but to go straight to the topic, I first introduce our first specialist, Sanna Rekola. I have put some of those goals of the chaplaincy work to repeat those aims and tasks what we might have as a chaplains. These are the main goals applied here in Finland, in the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Finland. So it's good to remind that these themes we are specialized or are looking, especially from these point of views. How could we do our work better now or in future? And especially I want to remind you that even though we are very strongly emphasized to the well-being of the people, physical, mental, but also we have the spiritual point of view And that might be something which not anybody else are taking care of in the universities. The spiritual. We come quite many religions here from Christianity, Jewish, Buddhism, at least, or non-affiliated, and in most of those religions we think we gonna live forever or after this earthly life. So well-being is not only this earthly living, but a little bit longer to take care and think about. That might be something special for us, because if we as a qualified university chaplains forget this perspective, it is either completely ignored or it is hijacked, on my view, by other unqualified religious teachers or communities, where often other human needs and rights are easily neglected. So we have to carry out this special task for us as a chaplains, religious chaplains. Okay, then I shall represent our first specialist, Sanna. Welcome, Sanna, and you are a future-oriented, multi-talented social change specialist in Sitra. Sitra is the Finnish Innovation Fund. Close to Sanna's heart are the themes of sustainable future, innovative learning, strengthening inclusion, and social influence. In her website, she says, the ecological sustainability crisis and other challenges facing us require major corrective actions from us. Obstacles to change must be identified and challenged. By education, Sanna has a Master of Art degree in history with a wide-ranging social science twist. So it's good to know, to us, not only the global megatrends, which Sanna is specialized for, but also the general future prospects in Europe. We can get an indication of this by getting to know the situation here in Finland, of which gives us some clue. How people's opportunities to influence have changed and are changing now. So warmly welcome, Sanna, and the audience. Change your slides here and here.
Thank you so much, Ari, for introducing me, and thanks for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here with you today. My name is Sanna Rekola, and as Ari said, I come from Sitra, which is a Finnish innovation fund. I will shortly tell you a bit more about it. And I will shortly talk to you about futures thinking that I claim is one tool that can help us to endure change. I also try to explain why I think so. But first, very shortly, what is Sitra? Sitra is probably quite unique organization, future-oriented fund that was established by Finnish Parliament in 1967. Our mission was back then, and still is, to build the successful Finland of tomorrow. What this means in practice has changed during the years, of course, and today our vision is fair, sustainable, and inspiring future that ensures people's well-being within the limits of Earth's carrying capacity. To make the vision true, we work closely together with a wide range of actors, society, as a think tank, partner, financier, networker, developer, and visionary. And besides foresight, what I represent in my organization, we work with three themes at the moment, which are democracy development, fair data economy, and sustainability issues like climate change and biodiversity. But let's start with a little exercise. I really enjoyed some physical exercise already with you. Thanks for that. But now I invite you to do a little maybe a mental exercise. You can close your eyes, and I ask you to imagine what comes to your mind when you think about future. And we know that future can be whatever from tomorrow to a time after 10 or 100 or 1,000 years. What kind of feelings or thoughts come to your mind? Well, now you can come back from the future, return to this moment, and I won't ask what you saw, but I guess that quite many of us have quite mixed feelings when we think about the future nowadays. There are many positive changes happening around us, and the world is going to better direction in many ways, and we know it, but more often we hear that our time is described as times of crisis. And there are acronyms like VUCA or BANI that describe that the world is uncertain, complex, non-linear, anxious, full of surprises. And in the middle of the crisis that we have experienced during the recent years, the question regarding the future has often been, how do we come back from the crisis to the so-called normal? I don't know if this resonates with your thoughts, but at least I have heard this quite many times. How do we come back from the crisis to the so-called normal? But it's increasingly clear that there is no return to the old or to the so-called normal. We have moved to a post-normal times where complexity, conflicts, and contradictions are everyday life, and normal is actually not a very useful word to describe the world anymore. So the world seems quite confusing, at least I think so. And changes are rapid, and it's difficult to cope with. And in a world like this, anxiety and distress are normal feelings to feel. And especially young people thinking about their decisions for the future, their lives, are in a hard place. Where is this world moving to? What should I do with my life, and how do I get along? I picked some statistics here to show what young people think about the future, so let's see them first. In one international study about young people's thoughts and feelings about climate change and government's responses to it, 56% of respondents thought that humanity is doomed. According to another international study that was carried out by UNICEF, more than 70% of young people believe that their own generation, as well as the future generations, will suffer from climate change. Quite hard. But we have other kind of data as well. Last winter, Sitra carried out a survey about how Finnish people feel and think about the future. And this Futures Barometer addressed that at least among Finnish young people of age 15 to 24, there is still hope for the future. 91% of Finnish young people are interested in the future. 87% believes that we can influence the future. And 45% of the youngsters see the future of Finland better than now. So young people were the most optimistic group in the survey. The older the respondent was, the more pessimistic the thoughts were about the future, and the weaker was the interest towards future. So maybe young people have many kind of feelings when they think about the future. The number I was very happy with in our futures barometer was that so many young people were interested in the future, and they thought that we can also influence the future. Well, however, going back to the important question of this morning, how do we endure change, and how can futures thinking help us to do so? In a world of constant surprises, we need futures thinking in order to be more prepared for the futures that may come, but also for visioning alternative futures and influencing the future. And here are my 3 tips or pieces of advice from the world of foresight and futures thinking that I think can help us to endure change as well. First, we should create a common understanding and dialogue on where we are now. Why? Because making sense of the changes happening around us together with others makes it easier for us to understand the changes and helps us to be more prepared for the future. Second, challenge assumptions and imagine alternative futures. Why? Because the future we see ahead looks not very promising, and it's probably not something we want. We need to question the assumptions about future and discuss more about the futures we want. And third tip is take action together towards better futures. And why? Because future doesn't exist yet, and it's up to us how it will be. Future is made, it doesn't just happen, and everything we do today or do not influences the future. So let's take a bit deeper look at these. So how to make common understanding about changes that happen around us? One tool from the world of foresight is megatrends. And here is a picture of the megatrends that we in Sitra draw in January when we published our recent latest report on megatrends. So instead of dwelling on uncertainty, there is now a need to understand the big picture of change, which helps us to prepare for the future. And megatrends can provide a good starting point to think about the future. And this slide summarizes the megatrends as we saw them, but of course there are a lot of other kind of lists, and this is not the only one. And in Citra's megatrends, our task was to analyze the changes, especially from the Finland's point of view. But I suppose the megatrends are somewhat globally recognizable. The megatrends, as the name say, are big long-term changes, and we are usually quite familiar with the phenomena they represent, but we tend to look at phenomena separately and not in the same picture as here. The megatrends should be considered together, as they are not isolated from each other, but mutually interact. At the core of Citra's megatrends, there is the erosion of nature's carrying capacity and the continued urgent need for ecological reconstruction. The changes consist of developments like climate change and biodiversity loss. And the future of nature's carrying capacity is influenced by the other changes happening around. For example, our response to challenges related to well-being or the way we organize our economy affect our ability to strengthen nature's carrying capacity and vice versa. What about the other megatrends? Growing well-being challenges mean things like aging population, weakening dependency ratio of society, and increasing mental health problems due to growing complexities and uncertainties. The battle for democracy intensifies, relates to global democracy crisis and geopolitical battle, but also the tendency for short-term decision-making influencing through information in social media, as well as erosion of trust that relates to society's ability to create sense of belonging. Competition for digital power gears up. Technology is developing in a speed never seen before. Big tech companies are leading the way, and we don't have sufficient rules to ensure that the development respects the well-being of people as well as resources of nature. And finally, economic foundations are cracking. We are more prosperous than ever as a humankind, but we know that the development has happened at cost of nature and future generations, so we can't continue this way. So joint sense-making of the changes represented by the megatrends can help us to understand what we think about the changes and how do they affect our lives. What might come next? How can we be more prepared for the future? And most importantly, what can we do about the changes together? My second tip was to challenge assumptions and imagine alternative futures. So what does this mean? The picture of the megatrends you just saw is full of challenges, but we should bear in mind that megatrends may also offer many opportunities. We need to challenge the assumptions about the future and imagine what we would like the future to be. Because without visions for a better future, we might end up drifting to a future that we did not want in the first place. Visions are needed if we want to influence the future. And if we dare to think another kind of futures and act accordingly, there is a chance the future looks like this or something else. The challenges may be stepping stones for better futures, and uncertainties can be seen as opportunities as well. The future is not yet set. So there are bigger changes ahead than we want to admit. That we can maybe say when we look at the picture of megatrends. We live in post-normal times of surprises, and old visions of the future are no longer sufficient. We need different kinds of narratives about futures and challenging of current ones. And in order to avoid the same old, we also need new people to take part in discussions of future that enable joint action towards better futures, with a plural understanding what better means. In the end, it's also a question of power. Who uses power over future? Who are speaking about future and whose voices are heard? Who is seen in the pictures about future? According to Citra's Futures Barometer, one group whose voice is not heard enough in the discussions of future are young people. How can we support them and amplify their voices? So my third tip was to take action towards better futures. According to studies, active citizenship for the causes we find important may ease distress and anxiety effectively. And there are many ways to act towards better futures. One way to summarize the actions needed for a sustainable future is to look at the spheres of transformation. We need actions that influence human behavior and introduce new ways of living everyday lives. We need actions that influence the structures of society, for example, new laws and regulations. But we also need actions that renew our ways of thinking. We need to reconsider what kind of values and worldviews we need in order to enhance sustainable future. What are the ideals behind the action? So, to ensure that we have also places to think about the actions, we need safe spaces and courage to think and discuss about the third layer, ways of thinking, worldviews, values of society as well. And I claim, at least in Finnish discussion, this is quite often forgotten, and we concentrate more on the first and second levels. So let's remember, looking from the perspective of the present, there are many possible futures, and we can influence the future. It's not set yet. And because we can influence the future, we are responsible for thinking the long term that is also the environment where our children and their children will live. And in Sitra we have produced a lot of different kind of materials and tools that can help futures thinking in different communities and organizations, and you can find a lot of English materials from our website as well. There is this called Future Makers Toolbox, where it's all very well accessible. So this was my presentation. Thanks for attention.
Yes, warmly thanks, Sanna, for this inspiring presentation. And next we will hear the presentation of Jyri, and Jyri is a chief specialist in the Institute for Research and Advanced Training for the Evangelical Lutheran Church here in Finland. He has specialized in the doctrine of the Christian Church and global changes in Christianity, especially Catholicism. Among other religions, especially Hinduism, Jyri knows like the back of his hands. Jyri wants to raise awareness of the global changes in Christianity, especially the facts that the Western countries are no longer the main area of Christianity. By education, Jyri has a degree in theology and 2 associate professorships at 2 Finnish universities of mathematics and of economics and theology of religion. So, warmly welcome, Jyri.
Thank you very much for introducing and asking me to be here, and good morning for everyone. My name is Jyri, and the topic today is mind, but I'm not a psychologian, I'm a theologian, so for that reason I will give you some insights in ways religions may contribute for our well-being and tackling with different futures and also enduring change. And in fact, I initially read the title of this session, How Do We Encounter Change? But then I took a note that it's enduring change. How do we endure change? And if I think about enduring change, I think, to be honest, quite often this is very challenging for religious traditions, and at least the general audience quite often thinks about religions that they are representing backwardness in our societies. But on the other hand, in the beginning, most religious traditions, they introduced a new vision of reality, and in many cases a kind of prophetic call for action, for change. Think about Buddha, think about Jesus, think about Muhammad, and so forth. In that sense, it's very interesting that we are in a situation that religion is very often related to backwardness, but on the other hand, the starting points of all world religions are very progressive in that change, that way. And quite often these traditions also started amid turbulent social changes as a kind of answer to those changes. And this is something we must bear in mind. And it's interesting that now, during our generation, we are experiencing profound changes in the global religiosity. I think that being a theologian myself, during these decades when I'm having my career, is very interesting because we are experiencing, for example, change in the map of Christianity in global sense. Quite often we talk about secularization, and of course secularization is hard fact in our societies we are coming from in the Western world. But on the other hand, let's say last 20 years we have been talking, or even 30 years we have been talking about how the religions are coming back. And we know that politically this means also that there are many different fundamentalistic interpretations of religious traditions which are also having their impact on global politics. At least since September 11th, 2001, we have been discussing these kind of things in our academic circles and also in media and so on. And also we have new spiritualities. When I was young and studying theology here in Helsinki, there was very much hype in the Christian circles in Finland, but also in other European countries about New Age religiosity. And in the 1970s and 60s, there was very much hype on Eastern religions coming to the West. And so those things are normal today. They used to be something we were, or quite many Christians, for example, in the Western world, were very anxious about what does it mean for our religious landscape. But now it's part of our normal way of living in a pluralistic society. We have also new spiritualities. And I think that quite often, for example, Christian mainline churches are tackling with these kind of trends. For example, introducing Christian yoga, Christian mindfulness, and that kind of things. And I know that you are quite well versed in these kind of things because you are working in the as chaplains in university contexts and other educational institutes. And it's also very interesting that the big maps, they are also changing. I'm giving just one very curious example. There are statistics which are saying that at the same time when Buddhism is emerging as a trend in Western world, there seems to be today more Christians in Asia than Buddhists in Asia. Think about that. Of course, religious statistics are very well known for the fact that it's very difficult to count who is representing which religion, and so Buddhism is more like a part of many Asian cultures, but still if you think the statistics, there are more Christians than Buddhists, according to some estimations in Asia. So that's the time we are living now, not to mention that more than 2/3 of Christians are living in the global south, which is really having impact on the ecumenical movement and how the Christian theology is evolving. And briefly, how does it look like in the Nordic context? And I know that this is applicable also to many other European countries. And in Finland, for example, Lutheran Church is historically associated with the established state power in many ways. Even though in Finland we have the Orthodox minority, so we are in that sense ecumenical country in the long run. Think about Lutheran Reformation. It started from the king. In the case of Finland, it started with the Swedish king Gustav Vasa in the 16th century. He introduced Lutheran Reformation in his kingdom. And so in that sense, we have also a very, so to say, I mean, this is something which is a burden for our church. We have a state power associated with our Lutheran church. I'm talking now here as a representative of Finnish Lutheran Church, of the Research Institute of this established church. And that means that we have to tackle with the issue how to disentangle the church from the state power in the minds of the people in a pluralistic society. Of course, in Finland there is not any state church. We have little by little disentangled many administrative connections between state and church, but still it's in the mind of the people. And how we could see the church, for example the Lutheran Church in Finland, more as a part of the web of non-governmental organizations in a free civil society than any, official religion of the state. And this is something I think you have to tackle in some of your contexts also, especially if you come from the Nordic countries. And one more point. What kind of statistics we have regarding Finnish religiosity? And the Church Research Institute published its last major report 3 years ago, and now we are preparing the next one. And in that report, Uskonto arjessa ja juhlassa was the Finnish title of that report. There was very interesting information of the changing religious landscape, and it applies especially to the Generation Y, the so-called millennials. You see here Finns' main worldview identity groups in different generations. And I hope that you pay attention to the orange color here, those who were born in the 1980s. And you can see that number or proportion of seekers as a self-identity is much higher than in any other age group. And you can also see that if you take this orange and also this violet color, you can see the violet is those born in the 90s. You can see that non-religious people are higher in both generations. And especially among millennials, cultural Christianity has even collapsed in that sense related to other generations. And this means that many ways of having your religious self-identity are changing towards kind of seeking to kind of liquid religiosity where you are more open to different ideas. Not so much secularized people only, but people who are willing to see different kind of new things in their life and seeking for answers for big questions. And I think this is also a kind of kairos moment for the church or churches or religious communities at large. If religious communities are able to give that kind of identity, not any closed identity, but open identity, starting from that tradition. And I think this is a very important question today. And we can also ask how to cooperate and live together in a pluralistic society. And I think here, when I'm talking for university chaplains or educational institutes to chaplains at large, that your educational institutions are a kind of laboratories for convivencia. Convivencia is a Spanish word, you may know it, meaning living together, which is some word foster interfaith dialogue and facilitate such interpretations of tradition that helps us to find the original vision of the tradition. As you remember, I paid attention to the fact that most religious founders had a very progressive, even liberative vision, which was really tackling with the social change around their contexts. And one more point also, because we are now having a celebration of 100 years of religious freedom in Finland, that the religious freedom is something very important. It's something we should cherish and something we should warrant, because there are also powers which are critical of that kind of freedom globally. You can see it in many countries. And how to warrant religious freedom, which makes this meeting of different faith traditions possible. Thank you.
Yes, warmly thank you, Jyri. And then I invite you to sit here to comment each other shortly first, and then we open the common discussion. Okay. Use this microphone for you. And which one of you wants to comment first? Sanna, please.
Yes, I can start. Thank you. Thanks for a very, very interesting presentation. I found very inspiring, and especially I like to be reminded that religions have been these kind of progressive players in society originally, and how they could be that today as well, when we need visions for a better future. And I think people also have this urgent need for thinking about futures, what kind of futures we want to have ahead. And I think communities, like religious communities, can be very important places for this kind of discussion in society. I think we don't have too many places to be able to discuss these issues. For example, what kind of values and worldviews we have and we should have in our societies, what kind of visions we have of better futures. Also, this kind of a safe spaces where you can share your thoughts freely and make sense of the world together with others. And I think there can be also communities where you can start acting towards better futures. I really like this word convivencia. I think it's also something that we should embrace, because that's basically the way we can also make better futures. We need each other, and together we can do a lot of things to change the direction of the future. So thanks.
Thank you, Sanna, for your lecture. And I have two things in my mind related to your presentation. First is that you were talking about how to imagine different futures. And I think that religious imagination is something which is probably neglected in our society. I like the word imagination. In Finnish it's imaginaatio, which is not very much used in normal parlance. So I would like very often to use that word in Finnish, uskonnollinen imaginaatio, religious imagination. But I'm not using that because I know that people are thinking why he is using so difficult words. What does it mean? But we should revive that kind of word, because that relates to or refers to something which is very important. And in this sense, in the end of your lecture you were saying something, or should I say mini lecture, because these were not proper lectures, but mini lectures. You were referring to the fact that we need new narrative. And I think that this is also something which is very much related to religions, because religious traditions are narrative traditions. That's a very important theological understanding underscored by so-called post-liberal theology. You don't mind me using a very theological word here. And I think that if you go to the religious traditions, you have the story there, you have a narrative there. You think about Christian Gospels, for example, in the New Testament. They are narrative material. And in this sense, I think how to relate that HO narrative with some progressive nucleus to our need for new imagination and new narrative. That's, I think, very crucial thing from the point of view of theology.
Yes, thank you. Still something, or do we open the common discussion? We have now a very good specialist here, so we next have about 20 minutes to ask the specialist whatever you have got into your mind. So now finally you have this opportunity to have answers to your questions, and already 3 hands up, and Mila shares the microphone. And please first say your name and where you come from. And probably, okay, we start you, and then there is 2 of you, sorry. Please.
My name is Jyri, I'm from Ireland, Northern Ireland. And I'd like to ask Jyri, because of his speciality in Catholicism, a tradition which seemingly resists change profoundly. I'm looking at all of the female ministers around me, and amazed at the Catholic tradition, how it does not change. What do you think?
Yes, it's easy for me to answer because I'm a Lutheran. But I wrote my dissertation on Hindu-Catholic dialogue, and for that reason I have been studying Catholic theology. And of course, if you think about Catholicism, you may have in your mind the paradigm of Tridentine Council, which was, in the 16th century, made Catholic doctrine very solid and so on. And this continued till 1960s, when you had, or they had in the Catholic Church, the Vatican II Council. And it was changing the understanding of church being a fortress on the hill to a church being a pilgrimage towards the kingdom of God, which is asking all people of goodwill to join that pilgrimage. And of course, last 50 decades in Catholic Church has been also power play between different understanding of church, and now they are having the Latin American Pope, and many say that he is the first one who really implements the Second Vatican Council. Of course, and in that sense you can see many changes in Catholic Church. For example, Catholic Church was very much opposing the religious freedom before the Second Vatican Council, but now it's very much in favor of religious freedom around the world. But of course, if you think about female ordination and some other issues, they are hot potatoes in the Catholic Church now, and in fact, there is discussion. And there are even European cardinals who are talking about the possibility of blessing same-sex couples, for example. So I think that that kind of understanding of Catholicism is what many people think, but that's not true in that sense. So let's see what is happening there.
Thank you. Thank you. Hopefully that answer is enough. And then, please.
Yeah, Barry Barron, Colgate University, US, and the local rabbi. So there are two thoughts that I had here during your presentation in particular. One is, I'm not sure that asserting progressive origins of a religious tradition, and I'm thinking about my own, is as useful a response to fundamentalism as noting the progressive trends over time in those religious traditions, so that if in a given period, and so that you ratify as a traditional understanding the position that it's not only in its origin stories that religions are progressive, but that often, relative to the societies that they're in, religious traditions are progressive. Even if you want to go to the Catholic Church and you want to look at the Middle Ages in some situations, or you want to look at Judaism in certain cases, or just about any other one. So that's one comment. The second one is, let's think about convivencia, which it's an appealing term. I know where it comes from. The one caution that I would have in using it is that it wasn't quite as wonderful as people imagined. It still had situations, because the original convivencia in Spain was under the caliphate of the time, and Jews and Christians in those societies were still second class and maybe third class citizens. It was just, so intellectually, it was all the nice interchange and everybody was reading and writing Arabic and all this good stuff. But socially, it was relatively better, but not necessarily absolutely better. And I don't think that, and I think that's the caution I have, is that if we're going to state a religious position of being progressive, then it has to be with the understanding that we're using these words somewhat differently than their original sense.
Regarding the third convivencia, I think that that's exactly what should take place. I mean, we are taking words and giving new meanings, because I think quite many people don't know about the original context of convivencia, which you were referring to. In that sense, it's very pre-word, given new meanings, and so on. And your first question or comment was about fundamentalism and progressive basic ideas. Can you repeat very briefly?
Yeah, just quickly that, so the appeal of fundamentalism is the appeal, it's what somebody said yesterday about looking backwards. It's the appeal of, I've got a better guarantee, my religion serves as a better emotional guarantee and container for my uncertainties, because I'm going back to some wonderful time and those of us who want to oppose that, at least speaking for myself, I feel a need to oppose that from saying, no, what I'm looking back at its best, is actually progressive. And so if you actually want to be authentic to the tradition, it actually requires that you have a social and political progressive stance. It is, fundamentalism is a distortion, it's not a reflection.
Yes, I agree with you that that's a situation, and of course, the appeal of fundamentalism is something which needs explanation from someone who is psychologist or social psychologist. But as a theologian, I think it's more in the field of psychology why people are needing that kind of certainties. But if you need to think about religious traditions, it's more like not only progressive, it's also something that you must really endure the uncertainty, and you must go forward even you don't know where are you heading towards. And in that sense, especially mystical traditions of religions are, as you know, underscoring that kind of idea.
Yes, thank you. And the third question was there, please. Beatrice.
Thank you. I'm Beatrice from Hungary, and I have questions about the future. Thank you for the slides, they were nice. I have seen a couple of slides like this in my life, and visions of the future and problems and solutions. And I just think that people are sitting nice and peacefully here and watching slides like this, and the change is happening very slowly, and it's slower than we need. And what speeds up the situation is usually crisis, and which is changing your visions or speed up the whole procedure. So my question is that you think that is it enough that we are just thinking about the future peacefully and having visions and slowly we change? I think it's too slow. Or we really need this crisis of, I don't know what, life and we are experiencing on our skin and immigration and pandemic and whatsoever that we really act as well.
Thank you so much. I couldn't agree more with you that it's we need to change, and it's not enough to think about visions peacefully, because the world is burning in many ways, and there are crises that we have experienced during last years, and we have a lot of information about the challenges. For example, the megatrends presented about the ecological crisis and crisis of democracy and so on. So there are many crises going on at the moment, but if we are not living in the spot where the crisis is demonstrating itself, we can quite easily deny it. We can read the news, but then we don't have to care about it. And I think if we want to be responsible citizens and we want to also think about future generations, we should be aware of the crisis and we should act right now, because the changes are happening already, and we can't think that the future generations will then resolve all the problems that we have here. So yes, we need urgent action, and I think that's one way to react on the crisis and the issues and the challenges we see around, is that all kind of communities together, people together in communities and organizations, they take these questions seriously, and they really want to somehow make sense and think about their own role, what they can do in the situation. And I think what we have also tried to emphasize with our megatrends report is that we have to know where we are right now. So that's about the megatrend picture. We have to know what's happening around, and science is telling us a lot about what's going on, and we know a lot of things about that. But we have to take this all seriously, and we can't continue the way we have done. And in order to change, we need visions, because if we can't vision other kind of future, there won't be any change. If you get what I mean, we have to dare to dream different kind of futures, even though it's very difficult and there are crises. But still, we have to have the direction to go and go there together. with others.
Thank you, Sanna. And this next one.
Yes, hello. I am Pan from Finland. Maybe a little further question from this one. We are working in the universities with students that are millennials or even younger generations. It would be nice to hear your opinions, like in practical way, in concrete ways. What do you think that we should do so that the future could change even more rapidly than we see now? What are the practical ways that you would suggest that we should do, or the steps that we should take to encounter future in the way that you kind of presented?
If I start, I think that communities, like the communities where you are working at, are in a crucial role to enhance changes we need. And I think wherever people come together and there is a chance to bring people together to discuss and tackle the challenges together and make space for these kind of questions, I think that's very important step one to start with. And I think religious communities, as well as, for example, civil society organizations that usually have very strong value bases in their organizations and communities, I think people who come there, they already have some idea maybe that they want to have some kind of society world where people are, for example, looking after each other, taking care of each other, taking care of nature, and so on. So I think giving space to people to discuss and think about what they can do in their own communities and communities around other communities they participate in. That's, I don't know, I think dialogue and coming together is kind of the key to make changes happen.
Yes, of course, the very important mission in your profession is to support personal students. But next to that, I think that in more general sense, with the programs you are arranging and that kind of things, I think that you should facilitate their capability to dream of dreaming, in that sense, dreaming of better futures and so on, because we have also very cynical powers in our societies. We have nationalisms, we have all kind of fundamentalisms, we have, of course, power and money are always there, but we need some dreaming of better future. Vision.
Thank you. Now the time is running out shortly and we have opportunity for 2 questions. So there is the first of these 2. Is there still somebody? You are the last one. Please, Glenn.
Good morning. I'm Glenn from California. I love these conferences because I always get completely shaken up. Sana was speaking about we have to identify the obstacles to change and we have to challenge them. And so with both presentations now, I'm sitting here and thinking, well, we're all very committed to our traditions, and maybe those are the obstacles now that have to change. And so I'm just wondering out loud, with the younger generations being very highly interested in the future and very much into fluid spirituality, very impatient with our institutions and waiting around for them to change back to their progressive roots or to do anything good. I'm wondering if they have already created a new non-religion spiritual movement that we don't really recognize how organized and living together they are, because it's not about membership or one great leader, but it's about a movement of their generations for really super urgent, like immediate, not waiting around, like super urgent, on fire, like movement to do the changes that we need to work on the charts, Sanna, that you presented. So I'm curious your thoughts about my 70s.
Thank you for a very interesting comment. I think I don't have anything to add, but I think the need is there. Young people need this kind of being part of something where they can work towards better futures, and we see a lot of activism rising around the world. But I think the older organizations, how could we also offer a space and also the channel for young people to act and make their opinions to be heard in society, because I think they need the amplifiers and the supporters who also give space for young people and their voices. In our study, we really saw that young people themselves, but also the other respondents, so that youngsters their voices are not heard enough in the discussions of our future in society. Do you want to say?
Okay. I'm just adding that everything I say about interfaith dialogue is also, you should widen the perspective to include also non-religious connections.
Thank you. And the last question we give to the German.
Thank you. My name is Christine. I'm from Germany. My question is in the same direction. I'm sorry I didn't heard it before. So I want to mention many young people will not longer be patient, waiting for a change. They will have it now. And there is a movement in Germany, the last generation, they stick on the roads, blockading the traffic, or doing other actions, because, like you mentioned before, they have the feeling we are not heard. So, what do you think? Where's the place of our university chaplaincy work according to this movement?
Yes.
We've heard the German movement, which is blocking roads. Yes, I heard correctly. So I know we have that kind of activities here in Finland, and I think that I have been thinking that on the basis of Christian tradition, for example, progressive Christian tradition, all people working for church should be in some way activists also, and also encourage young people and so on to take active participation, sometimes even with being on barricades or being on the streets and so on. And in that sense, this is something in which many churches in Europe really must make different theology than they used to make when they were part of the state power system. If you go to the time of, for example, in Finland, when everyone were Lutherans and Lutheran Church was part of the power structure. So we have a real challenge, and I have been talking here in Finland very much that we can learn so much from theologies which are written and lived in the global south for this obvious reason, because they don't have this kind of heritage at all.
Thank you a lot, my specialist Sanna and Jyri. Give a big hand for them. For this last question, tomorrow we will have a real activist here to tell more about this issue. Yes, and thank you for your questions. And now I give a speech to Stephen.
I don't speak anything. I just
okay.
I'm a